Chinese investors are bearing the brunt of the backlash against the Chinese Communist Party's belligerence. The latest signs that are coming from Malaysia. Chinese investors in the Southeast Asian nation are now preparing for an upsetting return from their overseas business expedition. Thousands of Chinese middle-class investors are selling off their real estate in Malaysia to many Chinese individuals, the Malaysian properties for their second home. But the changing circumstances are forcing them to make a difficult choice in Australia. To Chinese investors who are no longer the biggest, foreign investors have made a plunge in property purchases, according to government data. The coronavirus outbreak, travel restrictions brings military tensions in the South China Sea and a rising anti-China feeling in the country. They have created a hostile business atmosphere for Chinese nationals in Malaysia. According to South China Morning Post, many Chinese individuals have opted to sell their homes remotely in Malaysia, rather than waiting until they will be allowed to return. The changing circumstances in Kuala Lumpur have come as a bolt from the blue for Chinese investors and property developers who have invested in the Southeast Asian nation. Malaysia has been a top destination for many well-to-do Chinese investors since 2002. Kuala Lumpur had then launched Malaysia My Second Home program, which offered long-term visas of 10 years to foreign investors. China had made the most out of this opportunity, and Johor, the southernmost Malaysian state located close to Singapore, became the hotspot of Chinese real estate investments. First, a number of Chinese investors started making Malaysia their second homes, and then Chinese real estate developers also found a growing market to capitalize upon. South China Morning Post has, for example, reported that Guangdong-based developer Country Garden claims to have invested around 20 billion Malaysian ringgits, which is equivalent to $4.83 billion in the Southeast Asian nation. However, things have gone downhill for Chinese investors in the Southeast Asian nation over the recent past. It all started with the Wuhan coronavirus pandemic. Malaysia does have a history of anti-China feelings. On the pandemic proved to be the final straw. In February, more than 400,000 Malaysians reportedly signed an online petition reminding a ban on Chinese travelers, while urging the government to save our family and our children, and then the Malaysian government itself ended the Malaysia My Second Home program in confidence, with Malaysia's policy of restricting the entry of foreign travelers amid the ongoing pandemic. Travel restrictions and anti-China sentiment in Malaysia is forcing several Chinese nationals who were considering a second home in Malaysia to think over their plans. Yet thousands of Chinese investors already having real estate in Malaysia find themselves in a dilemma. Chinese nationals who returned from Malaysia amidst the pandemic, or those who are already residing in China while owning real estate in Malaysia, are now looking at a bleak future. They don't know when they will be able to visit Malaysia again. As neither the Malaysian citizens nor the Malaysian government seems to be very clear on letting Chinese travelers enter Malaysia in, even on business, feelings are always going to remain hostile for Chinese investors in Malaysia. Reason being, there's a rising hostility against China within Malaysia, and also, Kuala Lumpur also might not be so fast to attract Chinese businesses. Given how the paper dragon frequently bullies Malaysia in the South China Sea, Chinese individuals are therefore selling their Malaysian properties remotely, experiencing large losses for the Chinese investors living within Malaysia. Also, the feelings are not very promising. They had purchased high-value properties in Malaysia built by Chinese firms using mostly Chinese workers. But now these properties are recording a sharp price decline. While the supply of such Malaysian homes has shot up, there is no real rise in demand, leading to extremely low prices. Patricia Lee, a Chinese investor owning a treehouse in Johor, said it's quite depressing when you see social media posts on WeChat trying to sell a 48 square meter apartment for only about 600,000 yen, which is $88,640. I spent more than 1 million yen for the same type of unit in 2016. As such, the big Chinese real estate developers who had invested largely in Malaysia will be facing a major catastrophe. The properties that they might have built for upper-class Chinese families would become obsolete in absence of any consumer demand. At the end of the day, Malaysia might just be at the tip of the iceberg. China is actually facing similar hostility across the world. As more and more countries adopted anti-China approach, Chinese individuals will find it hard to retain their overseas real estate in absence of any deep business interests beyond China's borders. Sell and leave might become the new normal for overseas Chinese investors. The downfall of the Chinese Communist Party is here, and China's overseas real estate market seems to be the latest victim.